Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to episode number 7 of the Mary and Sam Show. Today we're going to be talking about a very important topic about love. And I wanted to kick it off with what kind of love there is and how when you're young, you sometimes fall in love all the time. I remember myself falling in love when I was young in high school quite often. And it was interesting because I thought I loved a lot of people. You know, and
every day.
Yeah, right. And I would go drive by their house to see if her car was in the driveway. Like, I don't know what that did for me, but I always would check, you know, and she probably didn't even know that I loved her, right? Because I never said anything. But of course, hindsight, I look at her now and I'm going like, what the hell was I thinking?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting topic. Mary, tell us.
Yes, love. And that's such a powerful word.
Yeah.
And yet so misconceived by so many people based on what belief system we have about love. Like you said, when we're younger, the definition of love is completely different. Is you know, it's all physical attraction. And it's a feeling we get out of that. But obviously you said you look at her now, it's a completely different story.
Right.
And I want to talk about two different things in terms of the definition that applies to love. One is from a realistic perspective, that what is love in any intimate relationship, and secondly is what is from a perspective of being in a fantasy world where we fantasize and how that translates in our brain and we take action based on that. So in a reality world, you know, where you learn the basic formula of what does it take to make a relationship work, you know, how do you feel love in a relationship? You know, you see people that fall in love and they're like, oh my God, they're so happy, this is it. And then a few months or a few years later, things don't work out and that person is completely what? You fall out of love.
Right.
So what creates for that person to fall out of love? And it's basically the needs that we have and it doesn't get fulfilled by our partner. So it's how you feel about yourself based on how your partner makes you feel, you could completely fall out of love. Because your partner could be, you know, not accept you, criticize you, nag you, and make you feel horrible about, you know, certain values you have about life. So when you're not feeling powerful in a relationship, you could fall out of love, knowing that at the beginning you were so madly in love.
Yeah, so the physical attraction you're saying is gone at this point in this relationship.
Yes.
And then basically at this point the love is there's really no purity of love. It just is like you need to fulfill these obligations, therefore I'll the conditions, right. And then therefore I'll love you.
Yes.
And if you don't go according to whatever my belief system is in my head, the checklist, then I'm going to fall out of favor with you or out of love.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Right. And most of us go throughout life, we never get the proper training how to really treat your partner or how to have a perspective about love. What does it take to keep the love together and continue on that path? Because we're not trained that way, right? It's like to be kind and to be forgiving and to have that mental threshold, how to work through differences and overcome adversities in a relationship. Because that's what really is going to help people create more love between couples when you overcome adversities. Not just, you know, say that, oh, this is not working out for me, and then you're not providing this, and then there you go, you get separated or you get into a different path with your partner.
Right. I know some of my friends, you know, they've gone through divorces.
Yeah.
And some of them, you know, cousins and things like that. And basically, when they go through a divorce, so what ends up happening is that what they think love should look like is ultimately influenced by what the society has put into their head about what that should look like. It you know, do you see any of that in your practice?
Oh,
when you're
absolutely.
coaching people?
That takes us to the second point that I was going to bring up is, you know, looking at love from a fantasy world is like how do we get programmed from early on what is love? We watch movies, we watch, movie stars, and all you're doing is programming in your head that should be my ideal relationship, my ideal love world, that someone should be. It's all based on physical attraction.
Right.
And based on just what we watch on TV. And so it's right here in the belief system, and we want that, especially for ladies.
Right.
I was stuck with that for a long time because I thought like, oh, a perfect relationship is like just a scene from a movie.
Right.
From a movie scene. And that was stuck in my head for a long time because you don't know. That's all you think, that's an ideal world, which in reality it's not.
Right.
You
mean you're not married to a movie star?
And the difference is that when, through my practice, what we focus on is really on core values. What is it that makes you happy at the deep level? And most people focus on, I don't want to get into this kind of a situation with my future partner because my last relationship was lacking XYZ.
Right.
People focus so much into the past. As long as we focus into the past, I don't want that same relationship. You're focusing on that, and guess what? That's going to be your reality, because whatever you focus on, that's what you're going to attract.
Whatever you focus on expands.
Yeah, and so you're focusing based on fear that I don't want to be in that kind of a relationship. So I right away tell people, don't tell me what you don't want, tell me what you do want. And so it takes time to help someone discover what are your core values. Core values are something that is near dear to your heart, that you were brought up with, that you can't change that. Like, for example, you and I went through this process. It's like we had to discover what are my core values. It's like you being very honest.
Yes.
And that was very dear to my heart because my father was very honest, and he is very honest still. And so that's comfortable for me because I was brought up by that, and that felt good for me.
Yeah.
And so I wanted those qualities in you to have that. So that's important. Most people don't know what are their core values because they never take the time to understand them.
It's important, right?
Right. And on the flip side, when you've had a bad experience throughout lifetime, let's say you had a horrible relationship with your mom, and when you grow up, that becomes the opposing point. Is like, I don't want my wife or my husband to be like my mom or dad because you attach pain to that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't want to marry someone like my mom because if qualities you don't admire about your mom or dad, then you say, I don't want that person.
Right.
So whatever qualities you admire in your parents or caregivers, most of the time that becomes your core values.
There's so many layers to this stuff.
I know.
It's crazy. I mean, how many levels of things you can think about? And for a lot of us, unfortunately, it's happening at the very subconscious level, and we don't even know what it is that we want or what's driving us to look for somebody. Like you said, most of it is the environment you're brought up in. It's the movies you saw. It's what you thought. And I find it also very ironic because most of the movie stars tend to have the worst relationships. Have you noticed? They're always, Brad Pitt and whoever else. They're always getting married and getting divorced. Yet we look to these people as to having the perfect relationships, right? As being our role models. Right. So very fascinating how the world of media and everything like that can influence us.
Absolutely.
And we need to really stick to our core values. Ultimately, that will help us become a better husband, a better boyfriend, a better girlfriend, a better wife, whatever it is that we want to achieve, right?
Right, exactly. And that's what makes a relationship last long, because you can get into any relationship, but what can you do to make it last long? And constantly, you have to work on it. These are some of the things that, again, couples don't go through some training to work on these items, to discover, is this the right relationship? What is love? And, love is something that someone makes you feel a certain way. And for most people, we get into a relationship in the hopes of what can I get out of the relationship? Because whatever I'm lacking, I want to get from my partner.
Oh.
And that is not the right way because
So tell us, what's the right way then?
Well, the right way is, again, to look at what are the core values that you share. Do you believe in raising children? Do you believe in, you know, a certain specific religious values or beliefs you have? Do you believe in, you know, maybe working really hard and a go-getter, goal-oriented? Those things really important. Those are like really the foundation that what keeps a relationship going versus I'm going to go into a relationship to get something.
Right.
It's important to go to give,
Right.
but not to get.
Right. So if you're needy, don't get in a relationship. Don't get in a relationship because you're going to screw the whole thing up.
Well, because it's like, yeah, if you constantly someone is needy, it turns the other person off because you then, that means you have to attend to their needs because they're just like a children. It's constantly wanting something and it's...
it can get old fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we call that a stage 5 clinger.
Well, you name it what you want to name it, but it's just not healthy because that person is ultimately looking for alternative ways to fulfill that need from a partner, and it's an obligation on the partner.
Yeah,
you know,
it's not
that
fun.
makes you. It's not fun.
All right. Well, what else do we have to talk about?
Well, I want to talk about conditional love and unconditional love. In a relationship, I've yet to see that love is unconditional. We all have conditions.
Right.
You know, if you do something wrong, people get pissed off. That's the condition that we attach.
Right.
I don't know if true unconditional love really, it's probably very few percentage of people can accomplish that.
I know. I used to think that this may be something that you had for your kids, right? Like this really pure love where you love them and they love you back. But I find out, quite honestly, now that I have a 15-year-old, I've attached conditions to my love with him. Like, hey, you got to go to this kind of school or do this or do that or be this kind of a person. Otherwise, I'm not going to love you.
Right,
You know,
and
I mean,
that's conditioned.
Yeah, and that's becoming conditional as he's growing older, right? And which really sucks because I find myself, oh, wait a minute, I'm attaching stuff to this. Right, so there's probably
stipulation, conditions.
Very few things that are pure love that exists.
Yeah, I think that when I think of pure love, I can think of, you know, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, you know, Nelson Mandela, those people that, meaning that even though if they received pain, but they still had love to give to the world, and that's a difficult position to get to. For a lot of people, love is unconditional. I mean, I think as parents, we do have a lot of
conditional.
Conditional.
Yeah.
But as parents, we do have a lot of love for our children, but we just have conditions to accept them. Like you have to be a certain way to do certain things to accept you. Right. We all have the love. So that's why it goes back to that's conditional love.
Right, yeah,
you know.
Very true. Well, I mean, you know, and here's the thing, all we've been talking about relationships, we've been talking about all these different things on this show. And all of this really relates back to how your performance in life happens because it's like a chain link fence.
Yes.
If this part is going to be the weakest link in your mental health or your psyche or who you are, then it starts to show up in other areas of your life.
Yeah.
Right? And so we'll be talking about the next series that we're going to be talking about is how you have a relationship with your kids and how that can also affect your performance.
Absolutely. I mean, let's say that when you and I have an argument about something, right? Like right after that, how do you feel? You don't feel very empowered to do things.
Imagine if you had that argument before you went to work.
Right, exactly.
Or you had a blowout the night before and then you go to work the next day.
Right.
It's always going to stay in your mind.
Right. It's how you show up to the world to work for yourself is a direct reflection of your relationships with those that you love.
I know, I always hated all those happy people.